ideology behind the Law and Justice Party, ruling party of Poland. Well, I need to make this video and this short lecture because in the Western media, in the Western press, our current Polish ruling party, Law and Justice, abbreviated PiS, is considered nationalist, populist, and anti-European Union. This is not really the case. Western media, Western commentators do not really understand the intricacies of Polish history and ideologies which are part of Polish history in the course of the last 120 years, because this is where we have to get back to. So we need to get back 120 years to the country which was not Poland, because Poland had been partitioned among three absolute monarchies at the end of the 18th century: Prussia, Austria, and Imperial Russia. And in the beginning of the 20th century, in the Russian-ruled province, which later would become independent Poland, there were many political movements and organizations. One of them was a Polish Socialist Party. It was a workers' party, really a socialist party, one of many in the world, in Europe, and one of the leading figures in that party was our later national hero and the greatest hero of Law and Justice, namely Józef Piłsudski, later known as Marshall Józef Piłsudski. He was a socialist, but he was also a patriot. He thought that the socialist cause can only come about in a free, independent Poland, free from the Russian rule. Therefore, he, as a member of the Polish Socialist Party, he not only fought for socialism, but also for independent Poland, independent working man Poland. He became also a member of the fraction of the Polish Socialist Party known as the Fighting PPS, Fighting Polish Socialist Party, which was basically a fraction within this party whose sole occupation was to actually direct action, direct attacks against capitalists, against factory owners, and against Tsarist functionaries and officers. His most notorious action was the attack on the train in order to rob it of the valuables it was carrying. So that was the guy, Józef Piłsudski. He was just a brigand, a murderer, a socialist, basically. But in 1914, the First World War broke out, and in the course of this war, Piłsudski found an opportunity to actually take the fight for Polish independence into his hands, and with the blessing of both the Imperial Germany and Austro-Hungary, he was given the mission to form Polish legions, which were supposed to fight on behalf of the Axis powers. And supposedly Piłsudski already at that point in time was a German agent, actually. He was a German agent. So his Polish legions, alongside the Austrians, fought against the Russians on the Eastern Front in World War I. And at the end of the war, with the help of his legions, Piłsudski proclaimed independent Poland. There was a variety of other things going on, but basically he's considered one of the founding fathers of Polish independence in 1918. The second founding father of Polish independence was another huge figure, Polish politician Roman Dmowski, leader of national democracy. So this national democracy was a pre-war political society, political party, also occupied with the idea of Polish independence, but more into the nationalist side, democratic and nationalist, basically. And they were not socialists, they were anti-socialists, they were pro-free markets, pro-capitalist, while Piłsudski's faction was totally socialist. And in the course of the early independent Poland's history, Piłsudski did not actually become the leader of the country because he thought that the constitution, the nation, the young nation proposed did not give the president enough executive power. So for the first several years from gaining independence, Piłsudski was not really engaged in politics. In 1920, there was the famous, but maybe forgotten in the West, Polish Bolshevik War, when Poland stood hard against the onslaught of Soviet Union against the West. Poland was the first to fight and defeat the evil Soviet Union. Piłsudski was instrumental in organizing the defense, although there are many historians who basically downplay his role and supposed military genius in defeating the Bolsheviks. Anyway, so after the Polish Bolshevik War, Poland had a parliamentary democracy and was not really efficient in making any significant reforms. Hyperinflation broke out in 1923. Polish economy was in shambles because it was basically three economies melded into one after gaining independence. And it was really hard to make this economy work. So there was only one significant reform in 1924. It was the monetary reform by Władysław Grabski, which put Poland on hard money standard, on gold standard. So it stabilized Polish economy and ended hyperinflation. But Piłsudski, basically being retired and watching this thing with Poland unwinding before his eyes, decided that it's time to step in and end this misery. So in 1926, he and a bunch of his supporters, military men, performed a coup d'etat. Yes, it was the famous May coup in May 1926. So he gained power, suspended democracy, suspended parliamentary democracy, and started an initiative, a movement called sanation, to bring sanity to the nation and the democratic quarrels and, provide Poland with strong leadership. What kind of leadership was it, actually? It was socialism. Sanation and Piłsudski's rule, Marshall Piłsudski's rule, was pure socialism. Of course, this was not in the Bolshevik manner. It was more in an extreme statism manner, more akin to Mussolini's fascism. So, first of all, the state decided that it needs to intervene in the economy to the extent that basically year after year more and more of the economy came under the rule of the government, of the state. Foreign trade was definitely taken over, first of all, in order to make the state monopolies, like the sugar monopoly, gain markets abroad. So Poland basically dumped sugar abroad and raised the domestic price of sugar so that the poor Polish people basically could not afford much sugar. So the state, for instance, in this particular case, employed a famous Polish copywriter and artist. So he created a advertisement for sugar to make Poles buy more sugar. It was basically state-sponsored propaganda for sugar to be bought for those very high prices in Poland, to help the sugar monopoly gain markets abroad. And it involved every kind of industry: tobacco monopolies, matches monopolies. There was a monopoly on matches. Can you imagine a state-controlled industry of matchmaking? And so it went basically throughout the rest of the 20s, into the Great Depression, and throughout the 30s. Poland was very much hurt by the Great Depression because of the statist economy. It was over-regulated economy with so much state controls and so much taxation. Basically, it was the highest taxed country in the 1930s in Europe. Even Nazi Germany was not so heavily taxed and regulated as Poland under Piłsudski and his cronies. So Piłsudski died in 1935, and most of the power of the decision-making power was in the hands of his so-called colonels, his buddies from the World War I, basically. A new constitution was also drafted and proclaimed in 1934, which gave president almost absolute power, but the president was just a puppet. It was a guy, an industryman, Ignacy Mościcki. Basically, he was just a puppet for the military junta which ruled Poland until World War II. So, on the other side of the political spectrum in those sad days was Roman Dmowski and his supporters from the National Democracy. But Roman Dmowski became even more and more sort of radicalized. He became very Catholic, even though he used to be an atheist and a Darwinist. Now he became in that time ultra-Catholic. Basically, his political party became very traditional Catholic and anti-Semitic, and their support for free markets waned to a high extent. But anyway, they were the biggest opposition to Piłsudski, actually. So in the 1930s, we had Piłsudski's military junta ruling the country. The country became poorer and poorer up until the breakout of World War II, because this government, Sanation government, could not in any way bring sanity to economy. So, and the opposition, national democracy, was repressed by this autocratic government. Repressions were very heavy, actually. Also, communists were repressed because Polish Socialist Party, Polish Socialists under Piłsudski, did not consider communists to be real socialists because they were internationalists and basically pro-Soviet. So there were this famous concentration camp in Bereza Kartuska where both National Democrats and Communists were put into, and other enemies of the regime. So that's how Poland looked under the hero of Law and Justice Party. It was basically an authoritarian, poor, miserated, and incompetent camp of losers. That's why Poland basically folded within a month of Nazi invasion, of German Nazi invasion in 1939 in September, and, well, stopped being a country. So, today, when law and justice has already been ruling Poland for the last 5 years, do we see any similarities? Indeed we do. Law and Justice Party is not really nationalistic, but they are extremely statist and they are very socialistic. They are statist, you may say they are somewhat patriotic, but their patriotism is basically an attitude towards the state. So they consider state to be the ultimate goal, sort of a holy messiah for the people. They don't care about the nation as an ethno-linguistical construct or reality. They only care about the state, the Polish state. The state is everything. Nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. And the party leader, Jarosław Kaczyński, is the supreme leader, even though he is neither the president and neither the prime minister, just like Piłsudski. Piłsudski, after the May coup, he did not become a president, he did not become a prime minister, he used puppets. Puppets in the form of President Mościcki and, for example, Prime Minister Walery Sławek to rule by proxies. And this is how Jarosław Kaczyński rules today, by proxies in the form of Prime Minister Morawiecki and President Duda, while he is only a ordinary conventional member of parliament. So the goal of Law and Justice is to bring back sanation. They are basically a reconstruction group for sanation. That's what they are. They want to bring state ownership of the means of production, state control over whole of the economy, price controls, quotas, everything which made Polish economy in the 1930s a wreck. This is what they plan to do because this is their ideology. They all believe in it with their whole hearts. They do not trust markets. They do not trust people. They hate their own nation. They only respect the state. They only respect people who are fully loyal to the state. I think this is a very dangerous attitude, which shows the mental ineptitude of those people. And they all need to be loyal to Jarosław Kaczyński. Jarosław Kaczyński is their supreme leader. They are nothing without him. Just like they were nothing without Piłsudski after 1935. Poland made very bad decisions, which resulted in Germany attacking without any warning. So currently, if Kaczynski, for instance, dies, then there is nobody who could replace him. In fact, who could make himself as respectable and feared as Jarosław Kaczyński himself. So without Kaczyński, the peace leadership, the law and justice leadership is gone. And, well, it would be a ripe time for Russia, for instance, to make some very bold moves against Poland. Russia, along with Germany, is that similar to 1939? Maybe. I'm afraid it is a possible scenario. So, law and justice are not nationalists. This is where the Western media have it all wrong, and they are not anti-EU. They simply want to have more to say in EU. You should realize that Jarosław Kaczyński, over 10 years ago, around 2009, he actually called for the European Union to have its own army. Can you imagine that? He called for the European Union to have its own army because he thought that European Union could be a great force against Russia. But currently he's rather more interested in the treaty with the United States, which is of course a very, in fact, a wise attitude. But the diplomatic ineptitude of those guys of law and justice may as well result in the United States turning their back on us, because just like the Allies, our supposed allies in 1939, turned their backs on Poland when we were attacked by Germany. They did not do anything, and they double-crossed us in the Yalta Conference and earlier in Tehran Conference. Basically sold us out to the Soviets, to Stalin. And this may as well happen these days. Either the Trump administration or whoever comes after him may just consider Poland completely insignificant bunch of incompetent wankers and sold us to Putin for whatever reason. And European Union being already in quarrel with the law and justice government may as well ignore our pleas and calls for help. This is how they operate. Law and justice, their mentality, their attitude, their incompetence in diplomatic affairs, it is all very similar to how Piłsudski's guys operated in 1930s. Basically having no realpolitik abilities to secure proper treaties with Nazi Germany and Soviet Union, or to even create a proper army to defend us in case of war. So this is a really bad prognosis for the future. Here in the Central Europe, Poland should be the regional leader, really taking under its leadership the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and even Austria maybe. But Poland completely betrayed her closest friends in this regard. nowadays Hungary, Austria, and the Czech Republic, they do not consider Poland their friend, actually. And we used to form so-called a Visegrad Triangle, Poland, Slovakia, Czechia, and Hungary. So it's all gone now because of our incompetence, our diplomatic incompetence of law and justice government. And for instance, Hungary and Czechia and Austria all have great relations with Israel, which is ruled by the right-wing party of Bibi Netanyahu, while Poland, despite the talk, cannot walk the walk with Israel, enraging Israel time after time. This is again an example of complete incompetence. So, what about the nationalists, the real nationalists in Poland, the descendants of the national democracy tradition of Roman Dmowski? Currently, the people in today's Polish parliament who are representatives of this tradition is the Confederation Party, Konfederacja, with the presidential candidate Krzysztof Bosak. Krzysztof Bosak is a real nationalist. He is really in this tradition of Roman Dmowski. He's a very smart young dude. He is moderately pro-market. He understands markets in a way law and justice doesn't. So he's definitely more pro-capitalist, pro-free market than law and justice, less statist. Although his nationalism is his main trait, main feature of his thinking and his ideology. So he is definitely not the ideal candidate for people who are concerned with economic liberty, for instance. But he is definitely a nationalist and not a statist in the first place. So he definitely would not support the policies of law and justice which inhibit economic activity, economic development, and rely on state intervention and state regulation of the economy. This tradition, this national democratic tradition, is very much, very different from the socialist tradition of Piłsudski. And this tradition is also anti-EU to this extent that they consider EU to be an evil organization because it dissolves national sovereignty, which goes, of course, which goes against the Westphalian order of Europe, of the nation states. So, if the Western media are to learn something from this talk, they should learn this one thing: law and justice are not nationalists. Confederation are the nationalists, and they are more free market than any party in Polish parliament. The candidate, Krzysztof Bosak, is definitely the most free market and the most nationalist in this regard candidate in Polish presidential elections this year. The tradition and the nationalist tradition of Poland is also very different from nationalist traditions of other countries in Europe. Nationalist tradition in Poland is inextricably connected with free markets and even with free trade. And this is the funniest thing, because Bosak is definitely not a free trader. He's much more protectionist. I would say he is even more protectionist than law and justice today. because he really wants to subvert the free trade agreements or the free trade arrangements within the European Union, because he wants to protect Polish industry and Polish jobs, which are supposedly taken over by Hindus, Bangladeshi, and other immigrants. This is not the course of action I would personally prefer. But in this party, Confederation, there are other members who used to be members of the Korwin party, which became part of Confederation, like Janusz Korwin-Mikke, the legendary Polish free marketer, radical capitalist, Grzegorz Braun, and others, Artur Dziambor, I guess, who are really committed free marketeers, free traders, libertarians, basically, in most aspects. So they are the counterway to the protectionist wing of the Confederation, protectionist nationalist wing. So I think I will now end this talk. I hope this was enlightening about the Polish ideological history and how it relates to today's political situation in Poland and how bad the current ruling party is. There's really nothing to be rejoicing of, considering law and justice. This is a party which will bring Poland to the brink of destruction, and this is my main concern, because it really starts to unfold just as it were 1939. Good luck, Hinamatov.